Good morning, everyone. I'm Helga. I'm a PhD student at the University of Cape Town and also a Canon Collins scholar. All protocols observed, we've been told. That's how we greet. Ms. Apluan, is it? I firstly, before I even launch into anything, I want to thank you for introducing the topic that I'm going to talk about, which is TVET colleges, and to applaud you for returning to school. You are exactly the inspiration that thousands of other young women like you need. So thank you for sharing your very powerful experience. And I hope that I meet you on a dark road so we can continue this conversation. So allow me to greet all of you in this Education for Democracy dialogue as we recognize and we recommit ourselves to literacy and democracy in the general, in the informal, in the formal, in the vocational, in the adult education spaces that we occupy as practitioners, as practitioner activists, as scholars, and as elected representatives. This event, like many which encourage dialogue between the people's house and the people, makes real our democracy that despite the many flaws, and we can talk on one about the many flaws in our society, this space is still very sacred. So thank you. I'm here to talk about TVET education and the economy, and I want to ask you to imagine, Ms. Apluan, you are in the thick of the TVET world. Imagine that the TVET college responds to economic growth plans at the local level, at the district municipal level. We know that real economic, social, and political power is at the local level. How that power is expressed, I think, is a story for another day and a story on its own. However, it is at the local level where the social contract between the state and its people is most realized. And therefore, at the local level is where the TVET college can play a fundamental role, aligning work, and not just any kind of work, dignified work, with a just and fair economy. Not the kind of economy where you work seasonally. During Christmas, you work at Woolies, and then come February, the season's over, and then you've got to hustle for the next little bit of work, while still making sure you have your 150 for the 3 days that it needs to get you to college. So I want you to imagine that. Imagine that the municipality, through its economic and growth plans, can provide an enabling environment for industries and sectors, and in return, the college can grow the skills and labor for those industries. That those graduates are probably from the area. They are interconnected to the well-being of that district, and they understand in a very nuanced way the social and economic needs. I'm from the Western Cape, as most of us are sitting here, so allow me to sketch to you what the Western Cape looks like in relation to TVET. Now, nationally, you know better than me, there are 50 TVET colleges across all the provinces. The curricular offerings are usually in infrastructure, construction, electrical, plumbing, engineering, in business, in public management, in artisanal skills. The Western Cape has an established and relatively well-resourced TVET landscape. It has 6 provincial colleges, and most of them are award-winning. They are highly resourced. Falspad, Welland, College of Cape Town, Northlink, West Coast, South Cape. So within this landscape, there is a highly sophisticated policy architecture which makes real the promise of access to education for all. We know that is the Freedom Charter, one of the biggest refrains of the Freedom Charter over the last more than 50 years, what's it, almost 70 years since the Freedom Charter, has been that the doors of learning shall be opened. And the documents and program plans that we have in our modern 21st century political and policy environment holds the promise of a social and economic transformation. I take you back to 2012, the White Paper for Post-Schooling Education and Training, an amazing document that helped us to rethink what TVETs could be. The National Development Plan 2030, the National Infrastructure Plan 2050, the Massification of Skills Development Program as launched in the 2023-24 Department of Public Works budget speech. In addition to, and I've given an example at the provincial level, Tsepo 500,000 was launched in 2014 by the Gauteng provincial government to build the skills of young people in Gauteng. In 2016, the Western Cape provincial government invested 530 million rand to increase apprenticeships. And yet, there is misalignment, there is disconnection between what exists in the policy space, and we can be very proud of the work that's been done in thinking through and thinking us out of some of the challenges, but there's disconnection to that and the reality. And I think that Ms. Apluan's snapshot into her experience tells us what that reality is. Stats South Africa also, and they say numbers don't lie, although I dispute that sometimes. First quarter 2023 unemployment figure is at 32.9%, but youth unemployment, this is the scariest part, is at almost 50%, 49%. That was only in the first quarter. Those numbers have, despite the press releases by Stats and by the Department of Labor, those numbers have been consistently growing, even incrementally they've been growing. And the young people who are the most at risk are Black young people from deep rural areas and from working class urban centers. Let us not try to use euphemisms. It's young Black people. And so the question is, how are we able to strengthen the power of TVET education to grow a society and an economy that holds the promise of the future, but also harnesses the opportunity of the present? So I want to just give you some practical examples so that, you know, I'm a researcher, I'm a student, and sometimes there is a disconnect between academia and all the numbers and all the theories that we investigate and the lived experience. But this is now an example of the disconnection. Shall I press pause? Excuse me. Sorry. Can I continue? Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you what the West Coast municipality looks like. And any of you who've taken the Sunday drive or have family up to West Coast know that this is a part of this province that has a remarkable and a biodiverse natural heritage. So the West Coast Municipal District has identified 3 focus areas in its integrated development plan for 2022 to 2027. Fire and rescue. Under fire and rescue, this municipality has a fire and rescue services strategic master plan where they want to appoint more staff, build more fire stations, and establish more specialized units as part of disaster management. A second area is coastal management. The municipality is instructed and mandated by the Integrated Coastal Management Act of 2008 to provide management but also protection of South Africa's coastline. Climate change is a third area that the IDP has identified. They've identified that climate change is a serious risk to the environmental, socio-economic, and political stability. And this is not just words that's in a document. We see the illustration, we will see the illustration in Morocco, where there was an earthquake about a week ago. It is the poor people in Morocco that obviously are going to feel the devastation. In Libya, it is the poor people that have felt the devastation of an unseasonal, even though it's rainy season, it's an unseasonal storm. Who knows what's waiting for us? I don't want to be dramatic or alarmist, but climate change is a real part of our reality, and we have to be ready for it. So what does West Coast College offer? They have no programs that have any direct connection to climate change mitigation, disaster management, renewable energy transitions, biodiversity, coastal conservation management, oceans economy, and maritime. These are all areas that the IDP, the Integrated District Development Plan, have identified as growth areas. The college is not able to offer any of that. So while we acknowledge, and the people, especially practitioners in the room, will confirm for us, curricular transitions in South Africa are slow-moving projects. It's hard to change curricula overnight. But the reality is, as Ms. Apluan tells us, many young people residing in the West Coast will not be able to access the skills via a public TVET college to help grow their communities into the 21st century. Second example, the city of Cape Town and its film industry. The city has identified, the city has a form strategy, plan, which identifies championing skills development for the strategic pillar of the economy in the Western Cape. Its actions are biased towards partnering with industry, with tertiary institutions, and working with national government. I want to just pause for a second and make this critical point, particularly with regard to the film economy in the Western Cape. The film economy, as much as the provincial government confirms that it is a big contributor to the GDP of this province, is largely untransformed. The people who owned and controlled the industry and were able to make money from this industry 35 years ago, 45 years ago, are still the same people. Young Black people we are being asked, we are not young, young Black people are being asked to tell our stories, own our stories, but not own the means of production that makes those stories. I can go on about it as you can hear, but I want to make a very critical point. The city is also home, the metro, to 3 TVET colleges: College of Cape Town, Falsbeck College, Northland College. College of Cape Town has 9 campuses across the metro. Northland College, 7 campuses across the metro. Falsbeck, 5 campuses across the metro. What does this tell us? In Cape Town, young people should be of the luckiest in the country, with 3 public TVET colleges, 9 campuses across. The film industry is a 5 billion rand contributor to the coffers of the city of Cape Town. They make 35,000 seasonal jobs each season. None of the 3 colleges offer a public TVET education in film and television production, it just boggles the mind. It just does not make sense. So we must ask the following of the TVET system. Are TVET offerings relevant to the needs and challenges of local and provincial economies? And can local industries such as the oceans and maritime economy on the West Coast or the creative economy in Cape Town rely on TVET graduates to graduate skilled labor across the groups, across racial groups into those industries? I want to offer the following as a contributor to a future imagined TVET sector. The incremental devolvement of higher education TVET mandates to provinces and local government. I think that is one step. It could bring the function of TVETs closer to a district development model, closer to the intergovernmental planning space to leverage economic, education, and labor frameworks. Number 2, to reimagine TVET courses which can service economic, environmental, social demands of municipalities. Disaster management, fire management, coastal and biodiversity stewardship, film and television production are some of the programs which can respond to the desired outcomes of an IDP or an economic growth area. And yet none of them are offered by a public TVET college. I hate to think summer 2024, if there is a catastrophic heat wave or fire wave, whether our municipalities are going to be equipped if they don't have the skilled people to manage that. And where do those skills lie? In the young people. Finally, and I think perhaps crucially, campus expansion to rural areas so that young people have greater post-schooling options in the towns where they live. You don't have to spend 300 Rand every 3 days to get to college. This may help stay the brain drain to urban centers and ensure that local skills are developed for local industries by a local public TVET college. It's clear the landscape, both nationally and through the efforts of colleges, indicate that there is general agreement that the TVET sector is a powerhouse of potential for the economy, for developing skilled labor, and for realizing the youth dividend so obvious in our population. More importantly, the sector can contribute to a thriving labor force and an engaged and active citizenry. For the true potential and power of the public college to be realized, it must play a greater role at the local level in the life of local society, and it can do so through offering programs that are relevant and linked to the socio-economic growth plans of the local government. In doing so, young people can play their part in the growth of their communities and find dignified entry into a labor market. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open the floor for comments, I didn't give Helga the introduction she deserves, and so I think it's very useful to also get that to understand the context of this, of her PhD and of the very powerful presentation you made. So if you'll just allow me a minute, apart from now doing a PhD at UCT with the support of the Canon Collins Trust Scholarship, Helga has been in the trade union education and social justice space for more than 20 years. In the last 5 years, she worked in the youth and technical vocational education and training space, that's TVET. 2014 to 2017, she was the director of a TVET bursary scheme, and through this was able to design and plot a TVET graduate attributes program. So, deeply rooted in this work, colleagues. Can I now open the floor for comments, questions, thoughts, ideas, young people, old people, everyone in between, as well as those online. Let's start at the back at the far left. Thank you. Please, would you introduce yourself as well, sir?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacques Bomanga, and I run a social enterprise called Kuba, which connects small businesses to jobs around. I think my question is just quote unquote. It's not a question, it's more of a statement for both speakers. Lovely findings. I'll love to hear your findings. What I'm picking up also, I started my work in 2015, which was looking at how can we create jobs for young people in the townships to actually find jobs within the small business that are operating inside the township. So removing that idea that you have to find a job inside the city of Cape Town, because that job comes with a lot of other social attachments that cannot allow you to actually get employed in the city. That was driven by a graduate at TWC, and throughout TWC, I ran an informal business selling stuff at the Stratbridge. And during that time, I employed 2 people, and I thought that if I can employ 2 people full-time, paying my UWC fees, surely other small businesses within these communities can also create jobs within the space we live in. But then we have other ideas of how we classify informal jobs versus formal jobs that makes people don't want to work for their local business. But what I'm finding out is the biggest challenge is coming out from the town planning, how our cities and communities are being planned. So from the lady who presented from her posh schools, what I picked up is her schools in the suburb area, and they have all the other infrastructures around that allows the young people that go to that school to access after school curriculums, but also in the weekends where you can access your local parks. I went to Queen's Park High School after I matriculated from Warm-Up Junior as well. So I grew up in Woodstock. I've seen Woodstock growing from don't enter your bench streets to you can have a coffee at Gimpy Street. But in reality, is a lot of the young people I grew up with are still unemployed in Woodstock space. Sure. So Woodstock has been gentrified or has been developed for using the city word. And yes, we see all the nice things. You can now walk all the way from Gimpy all the way to Rochester in Observatory without getting marked halfway through. But the reality still remains the same. The people are still unemployed. So, and also what has happened is just within the inside community I grew up in, there are things that activities of young people we used to do where, your local parks are now all fenced up, can't access them. I went to Maitland swimming pool doesn't exist anymore. We used to do a swimming pool competition with the kids from Maitland High School versus us in Woodstock, when we used to roller skate all the way that side. So those little infrastructures that allowed young people to participate in the after-school curriculum are no longer in place. Where Maitland Pool used to be, it's now complexes in that space. The local parks, I think you all know, they all locked up. So again, to the earlier gentleman who presented, it would be nice to see the SRO's officers actually maybe going to man those local parks to allow young people to have a place to play, to allow young people to have a place to engage with each other, because those things don't exist anymore. And this is not a long period of time. I'm sure each community had a library, each community had a swimming pool, each community had a park. But all of those are being redeveloped or developed into apartments for people to stay in, but no place for kids to play. In the school program, the school learnings, I think we've also heard from other people. There's more emphasis. It's almost more of a you're here because no one wants you type of attitude. That come spend a day here, no one is really care, like what you said. I mean, if you look at the school that we said, lucky enough to visit a lot of these communities. I was in school in Strand, and the school feeding schemes, they're giving kids mealies, sample beans. And even the rats are dying behind the school kitchen. So if the rats can't eat that food, what are the kids really eating? How do children eat food? Like it's safe to look at it. So it's almost tick the box system rather than are we catering for our future generation, we're catering for employment. So that also needs to be looked at is, who's the service provider for these programs? Is there actually a national plan to say what must they be fed, what type of food should go to schools? Because everyone gets the standards and then you find the cheapest food you can give and just pick a box, and there's no oversight what kids are actually eating. When you see that truck bringing in food, we are putting a project in Strand, and I was observing this guy delivering the food. I mean, it's worse than what the prisoners are eating, and this is the food that we're giving to primary school kids. Yes, it's food, one will say, but they don't have food at home, so they must thank for what they have. But we need to really look at put a human element around that. Again, the lady who presented nicely going forward. So in our project, we've always emphasized on the using local laborers for the local projects. We've worked with a lot of larger construction companies to say, when you're doing a project in the community, have you found a local person in the community to work with? And we're not talking about the community representative, just take a box. I'm talking about from your manual labor going forward to even skilled labor that you need to build this project. And these things have been ignored throughout whether the colored community or the black community, the townships. And what has happened now, this is also across the country that we've seen, they have created a deeper program. So it started off as a community group says, you can't do this project if you don't hire a local person. But now it has become more of a gang affiliated programs where they charging extortion money for construction projects. So now the challenges that could have been solved very cheaply with just engaging the community is costing the province and the country billions of rands on a daily basis because these projects are not being delivered on time because they're now being held ransom for the local contractors. So it's good on you saying that you look at areas like West Coast, the key area points that you mentioned. They know they need those skills, but they don't want to train the local kids or young people to do those skills. Again, so I think there's a miscommunication or misalignment between the political will, the social organizations, the communities, which, by the way, they're all closing down slowly. It's like there's a big wave to kill NGOs. I don't know what's happening in that space, but they no longer, that community actors will say that this is my community. How do we take ownership of this? How do we make sure that the West Coast schools, the kids learning how to be fire and rescue programs, coastal management? No one is doing that. Because if you went Atlantis and ask any young person what you know about this, surely they'll tell you, I don't know, I'm just looking for it. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacques. I'm now going to hand over to Farrell for comments. Is there something that I didn't see? Another hand? Oh, go ahead, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zalia. I am a private provider. I've got no connection to the public sector, but I do a lot of voluntary work, and my partner and I do also voluntary trust. The thing that I want to talk about is my lived experience of working in the community. So I grew up in Texas, who currently is without the engagement. Impoverished area, the quantile 4 school. So I think we all understand the limitations of it. So the level of funding that that school, private school gets is the same level of funding that goes to a school that's in Thailand or Rwanda. But this is a school that was in a poor community where the 90% of the parents are unemployed. Thank God for the principal. You've got a feeding scheme at the school that feeds the kids twice a day. You've got a food garden that started. It does aquaponics. Everything that he did to create food for the children. So the children come to school because there's a place where they can get a meal for the day. The thing that I want to talk about is the fact that at 3 o'clock, the school gates get closed and the community can't get access to the school. That school gets closed for the whole of the weekend. So what happens during school holidays? The school gets vandalized because the community has got no interest in what happens in that building because they're so disconnected from the building. We need principals and teachers that are committed to the environment in which they are practicing their craft. You can't just get into your car or you can't drive into a car with a fancy vehicle and then drive out and around you just as poverty. What are we telling children? That they're not good enough? I met a young man who comes to school at Factory Primary. The whole family members are drug addicts. He comes to school with broken shoes, broken clothes, but he comes because that's where he gets his meal and he gets educated. But he is a problem in terms of discipline because there's nothing at home. The parents aren't interested. So yes, so we talk about we must educate the parents, but we can't get the parents in the school if the school doesn't include them. And they are made to feel that they're not supposed to be there. And all we want to do is go to lecture. But we don't understand that this children, when they go home, there's no adults at home. If there are adults, they are so blown up in their minds that they are just left to their own devices. So there should be something happening between 2 and 6. Make me very passionate because we have this in the old age call it naturally kids. The children here are the next to the parents of the working. Our parents, as much as I think they would love to come to the school meeting, you can't have a school meeting at 7 o'clock in the evening if that is time when they're going to supper. Or 6 o'clock. So what is happening in the school system is there is a disconnect between the school and the community. In 2008, we did a research project for the province, just before the government changed. And our research project was going to all the highest schools in the city. And we can tell you exactly when we started driving up to school what we came to find. And the aim of the project was to do research on the Bambanari project and to roll that into school. The kids called them the Bambanaris, but they said with the dance stuff when they ran first, they used the kids standing at the gate. But we could tell exactly what we were going to find in the school. Where the principal was on top of his game, where the teachers were committed, where the school was clean, where around the school the area was clean. Education happened. In the school where we drove up, where the things were lying on the ground, the gates were open, it was filled and littered right around the school. No education happened. We went into the toilets, there was the birds were nesting in the toilets and the kids had to go to the room. No seats, no roofs, no nothing. And this is primary school children. So we ask ourselves why the kids surviving. That is the community where they have to live. And if you come from a community where education or where discipline is not the order of the day, you can't come into a school now, you must be quiet for 3 or 5 hours when that's not what you do at home.
Yes.
So that is my issue on the schools. I think we need to rethink what we do with schools and how we shut schools out from the community. I just had a WhatsApp from a young man who wants to do hip hop at the school or hip hop dancing in the community. is trying to find a space and it's free for the kids, but he can't find a venue to do it. And his initial play. You know what I'm saying? So there is goodwill in the community, but it's not that they can get access because the government buildings is all been hijacked. They do SASSA grants, they do all kinds of things that they don't have to pay a rent in the community to get access to the facility. That is the problem. So the other thing I want to talk about is when we talk about TVET and then I agree with you about the City of Cape Town. We should have creative industries in our TVET colleges. But the problem that we also have is that if you look at who runs it, we have got seekers who are sitting with billions of rands in their budgets and there's no educational training happening at the mandates. And so the problem that I have when we talk about higher learning is that form an industry, like you said. If you try and open up a studio and you go and tell registered for the new seeker, they will tell you that you need to have a studio, equipment, and just to do that, you probably need R500,000. Who in the community has the money to provide that to do training with young people to do creative work? So we also need to think of how what happens is because the young people when I ask them, do you know about the TVET and you know about the community station? They say no. Where do we go to get this information? Nobody knows where to go. This is in the city where you've mentioned all these colleges, but the young people don't know how to get access to the colleges.
Because the colleges are also very expensive. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Farrell, and then if we can keep our comments brief because we have more presentations to come and I want to honor everybody who's come here to hear from everybody. No, please, not at all a reflection on your comment. It was very well received. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't want to preempt because I'm a speaker later on, but and no doubt I will likely pick on some of what has come on. So just I think Zalia, your contribution highlights a whole range of issues that was also raised earlier in terms of how the social, socioeconomic, I want to say political as well, but not party political, context impacts what happens in all spheres of society. So that we must have as a kind of frame of reference, I think, as we move through our work. In any of the spaces, schools, TVET, community, adult education, where I come from, the work that people like Ashley and others are doing. So Helga, thanks. I mean, I agree with most of what you say, but there are one or two things I just want to flag. I'm not in the TVET space. Let me declare also, in many ways, I'm quite critical of not TVET as an offering of skills and education development, but I'm critical of investment, and in part, I think you pick it up, investment into that sector and the so-called throughput. I hate that economic language, but you get what I'm saying, right? Because I think, because I think there are serious problems with that in other areas of society, education, knowledge development is hugely under-supported. So not want to juxtapose context, but I think we must, again, going back to my earlier point of what actually you referred to as a neoliberal context we operate in. There are no straight lines between input, sound like a little economist here today, between input and what comes out on the other side, right? The point is that when we are investing, and I use this in quotes, and then we make certain logical conclusions out of that. So one of the points you raised, Helga, is that we need local budgetary and management policies, if I understood, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. We need a government economic, what did you say, growth plan. We have planned and policy to death in this country, okay? The point is, how does this translate back to where people find themselves? How does this translate back to the fact that our economy is quite happy to have masses of unemployed people, so big business can handpick? I have a son who works in the film industry. I can tell you the problems. We can sit here the rest of the day and do that. Okay? You make a valuable point about who owns, who controls. It's that usual story, right? And who benefits and how do others not come into the system and so forth. And how money goes out of this country from the filmmakers and companies, and they leave with their product of the labor, cheap labor, shall I add, in the industry.
So I think there are a number of things we must unpack. Just to have good policy does not translate. I mean, I walked, you referred to Falls Bay College, I live not far from it. I walked in there a couple of years back. I thought it was an hotel I was walking. Then you were with me, you know. I thought it was a hotel we were walking into. You know, it looked like the foyer of a hotel. And yet, students can't afford to go there. So I think we have a much bigger question to ask about, you know, what the TVET space is providing. And the other point, lastly, and because of time also, I'm worried about, you know, I'm going to have 2 minutes for my presentation later, is that, you know, Helga, the point about, it sounds like a federalistic kind of suggestion you're making, that if the local government, this province, you know, not the local government, the province can manage certain of the industry's oversight and so forth, it might help to solve the problems. I'm not saying I'm anti the idea of gaining greater local, I don't want to say control, but you know what I mean, their oversight, is that if we don't have a national standard, and I say standard in quotes as well, in certain contexts, I wouldn't want to leave it up, and never mind which party is governing. I'm not into party politics, I like to call it. You know, it's about how do we ensure everybody benefits. And unfortunately, this being the most unequal country in the world, and with the highest unemployment, and in fact, those youth figures are probably higher, Helga, from what we see in government documents. You know, we have major problems that we've got to face very, very differently. So in a sense, that's my pretext to what I'm going to say. Maybe later, so I'll stop now.
Can I respond to Farrell and the other speakers? I think the first speaker, thank you for that, Farrell. It's going to, you'll see in a moment that we agree. But 10 minutes is a short space of time to put all of that in. The one comment, I think it's Jacques at the back, you spoke about the spatial apartheid that we all still live with in the city, and you are absolutely spot on. We can't even begin to imagine how schools can look if those schools, Youthfield High, my alma mater, is still there with a tennis court that we raised funds for that looks like the weeds are growing over. I can't imagine what other schools that have such proud traditions but remain still in the spatial context of apartheid. So I absolutely agree with you. Ashley made the point that education can't solve everything, and schools can't be everything, but they can certainly be the nucleus of some parts of us reimagining. Farrell, like I said, there wasn't enough time. And I guess the language that I use to describe certain of these things, you also make linguistic choices so that people can respond and people can hear you, and certain spaces don't call for certain phraseologies. But I think, Farrell, there are windows of opportunity, and that while you are cautioning against the control, the decentralization of control to the local level, particularly in contexts and locales where there are still gross inequalities, I think that there are windows of opportunity. And I give you the example of the work of the Surplus Peoples Project on the West Coast. They support community campaigning and community strategies around the very things that have been identified in the West Coast Municipalities IDP. Biodiversity, agroecology, food sustainability, also imparting skills for environmental sustainability to young people. And so those windows of opportunities exist, but again, it is the non-party political will. The second opportunity, I think, Farrell, is, and it will require, once again, practitioner activists, scholar activists, and everybody else to agitate for these features of a solidarity economy as an example. Even if we just win one feature of a solidarity economy in the West Coast, for example, it's been established, the practice has been established, it's something that can be learned from in the Sikusiki, for example. It's something that the South Peninsula municipality can learn from. So I like to say this, Rome wasn't built in a day, but there are windows of opportunity. And if we can agitate to insert some of those things, that the people's housing movement that have that now have occupied the hospital in Woodstock, and it is now a thriving community. That's an example of social housing, of people owning social housing. And how do we make sure that those things, those elements become part of how we want to plan and imagine our economies and our society? So I don't have, 10 minutes is not a long time, but I think we're on the same page. Thank you.
There's a comment online from Beverly. I don't know, Beverly, if you want to come and make the comment personally. Do you want to hop on? Okay, I'll just read it for you. Thank you, Helga. I'm wondering about the cultural traditions that shape TVET research and practices. I'll ask this because the function of TVET in, say, Britain, is it the same here? Are there countries outside of Europe that could be drawn upon?
Outside of Europe, absolutely. And I'm going to write a paper on the opportunities, and Ivor has advised me to not add this right now, but it's there now. Sorry, Ivor, you can critique me to death afterwards. But BRICS presents an opportunity for agitation in change. As a leader in the BRICS, well, an emerging leader in the BRICS story of the Global South, our government, through the DHET, have been part of a lot of TVET initiatives, TVET mechanisms. Again, it's death by paper, Farrell, but those opportunities exist. That's the one thing. The second opportunity lesson, Beverly, is in China. China, by the way, has the largest TVET architecture in the world, but they also have what they call TVET districts. The TVET College is in the middle. So the College of Cape Town, for example, will be in the middle, and the film studios, the lady at the back was talking about film studios, would be all around. So as an example, so that students would be able to walk from the classroom onto the shop floor, building sets, doing makeup, making costumes, as an example. I think that is a fantastic, of course, it's context specific. China has taken the last 35 to 40 years to build this up, but it is something we can work on. With regard to the creative economy, the lady at the back, 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, the South Korean government decided to invest in their creative economy. And today, everyone who is not even Korean knows about Gangnam Style, and they know about K-pop, and we all watch K-dramas and horrors on Netflix. That's an example of the investment, but it takes time. So yes, Beverly, I think there are non-European examples.
There are many hands up in the room. I wish I could show you, but I think Mara's hand was up quite a while before. We'll go from Mara and then we'll go around the room, if that's all right with you. And then we're done. Thank you, Mara. You got the floor.
Just a comment. I live in South Africa, by the way. So for me, another country, I've got no interest because I've got to fix my country and my students and my people. And we cannot compare what those countries have because they light years away, light years before us. So what we have here, we fix. My second observation is that I'm in the CET sector, which falls under higher education, by the way. And there is no way, how can I put this? With the curriculum, for instance, the curriculum, we can say that the CET sector, you look confused because it seems like you don't even know there's a CET sector.
You read my face.
Yeah, I can see it on your face. So the CET sector is, which I detest to call, is the student that for own reasons couldn't finish that piece of paper. So we serve those students. And the curriculum as such does not speak firstly, because it's not aligned, and we're supposed to be the feeders to the TVET colleges. And I think one of our students want to add to that. So the feeders, and when the student is supposed to go to the TVET college, finishing the grade 9, going through, that student doesn't have access because they don't come from a formal school like the high school, for instance, which is the same grade 9, by the way. So to me,
So to me, whatever they're saying, it gives the student the access to the working environment. Please show it to me, and then I will believe. But currently, I have my reservations about the TVET colleges, which in a sense is what was months ago, the technical school, trade schools. Now, and I think I see older forums here, like OGs. I see some OGs here. And if I remember, when I grew up in our community, which was Hagertown, and there was the community colleges. I don't like ballet, but my parents said, my mom said to do that. You know what? I don't like the ballet. I like musical. I did the needlework, asked me now to show something, I know how to do it. And I was in primary school. So I think the idea of introducing the CET sector was what they wanted, but it doesn't work. It's on paper, but it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because the very same lecturer comes with the BMW to school. And in the same sense, one of the students is hungry. And then they don't understand when that person is sleeping. You see, so there's this whole mismatch of trying to do and trying to feed and trying to educate. But there's this big gaps that still need to be filled. And a lot of, I work in the ancestral community, how and behold, none of the surrounding area that a student, and I see them walking, they don't attend that school. It's students from, Bishop Labour's, Bells, and those students don't have the means to get there because the parents is not working. We fall under the same band as higher education, but we don't get the masters. We don't have the infrastructure. Okay, sorry now that I'm complaining. It sounds like I'm complaining, but just to give you an idea of what's happening within the sector. Currently we are understaffed. We don't have infrastructure, we don't have resources. But yet, I am supposed to finish a curriculum. And adult education, because it was that time the night school. And I think people, the powers, they had a misinformation of what adult education is actually all about. You know, and now we sit with the youngsters. I complain because they have all these social ills. I don't like the word play. Please don't use that word with me. They have so many social ills that I personally, as the facilitator, I feel drained because I want to help it. I want to fix it with it. But I don't get the help. I don't get the support from anywhere. I don't get the mental support. I don't get the financial support either. Because it's no money. But it's because I want to do it, but it is draining. So when people, please do not blame lecturers or teachers when they in the classroom and they cannot deal with 60 different personalities. Because you become like them. Yeah, you become like them. Because it rubs off. And you, as the person, is trying to fix it. So yeah, I'm one of the ones. So the point is that I just feel the TVET college is a mismatch to what the CET sector. So my advice would be that if we have the CET sector, there's a beautiful artists, but there's no art in the CET sector. There's not just no beautiful. There's the people that dance, and then they can't get into the TVET because they doesn't have the foundation at CET sector, nor at the primary school, nor at the high school. So it's difficult for them to access if it should be offered at the TVET college. because they want to see if you get the subject, you don't do that subject. So to me, it is not aligned, is the word.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. It is not aligned from what you see from here to there, and from there to the universities. It's not aligned.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I spoke a lot now.
No, very good, well received. Go ahead, please stay at the back. All right.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Frank. I am 40. I actually have two things to say. So, first one is seconding Asmara. On paper, going from TVET CET last year to TVET on paper, it's perfect. But once I got there in the second term, it looked like they tried working me out because I have a grade 9. And most of the students there are all matriculants. And even in last week, I had a lecturer go off saying he interviewed everyone for maths. And if you didn't pass his interview, what are you doing there? So, you know, that is something that's not advertised. And the more you think, like I had plans last year of at least 3 years of TVET, and I started working. Because of my age and 60 is approaching, there is plans and goals, but they put you off because on paper it's perfect, but once you get there, it's something else. The other thing, the second thing, why I say, or why I'm saying this, between a rock and a hard place. I'm 40. Most of the seniors here, 36. Then I'm stuck with the juniors of 20. So you can see these like, where am I? We need to look at, I'm going to step on toes, please don't crucify me. Corporal punishment has to come back. There is no difference between a teacher and a student. I've seen students fight with teachers physically. The point of origin, the point of power is not there anymore. So, and I mean, to me, it looked like it filters down to the side as well, because the death penalty is not there. So it's okay to beat up a teacher, it's okay to rob someone outside. There's no punishment. Sending someone to a corner doesn't work anymore. So that's my.
Thank you very much. On the right, in the corner behind the pillar lady.
Thank you. HELGA, congratulations. I'm so sorry that thank you, sir. I said your research topic and what you're proposing sounds wonderful. However, the reality is that there's a complete disjoint between basic education and the higher education sector, particularly the TVET sector. So children at schools are encouraged to go on to tertiary education and they're encouraged to go to university. The reality is that the TVET sector does not position itself favorably. I think the gentleman spoke about, throughput, etc. And more than that is you do not see the TVET sector, I'm going to use the expression, in your face, as it were, telling us exactly what it is that they do and how our children can benefit. I think the testimony of the lady and the grade 9ers who don't have anything to go to, and gatekeeping in terms of funding to go to a TVET college is cause for serious consideration. I think they are going to know that.
Thank you. At the back and go.
My name is Sulamina Mukeke. I'm from Hadi. I'm going to talk my mother language. It's gonna be easy for me. Somebody must try. Yeah, singing like if I need some way to sing like if I need some way to. Zizine, silapha nje sihlala koSharks and sinabantwana abafundayo kula primary park emizamo yethu. So ndinomntana phaa endlini ofunda ugrade 4. Unento endibuza kho each and every day uba tata sawuthi siphume nini kule ndlu inethayo, because xa ndihleli phaa esikolweni ndiye ndicinge uba ndizabuya ndize ekhaya kuyanetha. Okay.
Why don't you come forward so that we can put your microphone on as well? Thank you, sir.
Can you hear me from here at the back?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Or is the ordinance is templated from Mzamwe to informal settlement. Now, there you say that for the challenge with the human settlement, they are living in the shacks there, and also he is having a child who is in grade 4 at the school there. Uyabuza
because uthi xa esesikolweni uye acinge into yobana kuyanetha uShark lo uyanetha nyhani.
Okay.
So kudala sifuna izindlu kunyenetha leyabahawuzini ibisengubani lo mntana kaWatersoul.
No, basically he's saying because they are living in that condition, in the informal settlement. Now, their child at grade 4, she always cried because where they are living is always, full of water and it's raining in school. Now, he wants intervention. They try to ask the Minister of Human Settlement, the MEC in the Cape Town, but with no good results so far.
Siye sacela ke ndiyengakhe ndankqonkqoza kukhansila lo walapha eKapa. Ukhansila lo walapha eKapa wathi akananto kwenza, asina-leadership lapha. Ndamxelela into yobana asinayo i-leadership. So yonke into sizihambela ngokwethu ndim uzungu kulo mama ulapha ecankwam.
Okay. Imali tata ufuna uncedwa ngantoni na?
Phaya sifuna uncedwa, abantwana bakhala ngee-toilets ezivuza amanzi each and every day and kuyanuka apho sihlala khona. Umba wesibini ikhansila ayithathi inkunkuma.
Okay. No, basically it's the challenge in the local municipal services in terms of the solid waste, the refuse collection, and all those social things. Now they just want the intervention from cannot just if maybe are there any interventions that they can help to speed up the issue of subsidiary there, because they've got a problem with their counselor doesn't listen to them, all those problems that results in people becoming agitated, at Mzamwe. That's why they are here. It's him, Umama next to him, and the gentleman here. They are three. They came here, to plead for support.
Enye umba abantwana besikolo bacomplaina each and every day ngeza toilet. Bayenza bathi beza kum izolo bendibona ndithatha ifoto ndifuna ukusenda kukhansila. Babuza ntanzi uzasinceda ngale toilet nditewe ndifuna ukhansila ezapha but uthatha ixesha ukucinga. Ezi toilet zibuza amanzi ebheki and abantu abahlala ebheki izophuke ifestile. Ndiyabacebisa ndithi mabasebenzise i-inflation tax. Isikolo iSilikampa.
The high school or primary?
The high school and then ibe primary.
Okay.
Bayayazi orange group.
Colleagues, again, he is saying both primary and high school, they've got a serious problem with the, some toilets that are not in a good condition. They've reported, to the councillor with no assistance. Even the children, they are complaining about that situation. you know, because there's no way that they can help themselves in that type of a situation where there's no toilet paper, there's no water, there's absolutely, you know, it's a crisis. That's why the ordinary is here to report for the both primary as well as the high school in terms of living condition in that area of Mzamowito.
Apha endibinini ngasekliniki kukho amanzi avuzayo okokoko abo basekliniki xa bezawungena egeyithi kusoloko kukho amanzi avuzayo abo yikliniki abantwana aba bahamba phaya.
All right. Next, the clinic, there's a spillage storage, you know, that is there running, right? That's all the clinic, you know. Nobody is taking care of it. It's water as well as sewage. It's just running, you know, right to the clinic.
Okay, so that is a serious health hazard, and I think the best thing is for us to maybe take this offline and talk privately after the event. We are not in a position to help, but we definitely know people who will be able to take this further. I'm thinking specifically about equal education, possibly the Legal Resources Center. If you don't mind, we're going to move on to the next comment. There's a comment in the room, and then there's a comment online, and then we're going to have to close for a comfort break. Just to let you know, anybody who's itching to go there, just a few minutes, and we'll have a break. Sorry, Carol. I hope you don't have afternoon plans. Okay, thank you. At the back, sir. Would you kindly keep your comment brief, just because we're aware of time? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Now, there is this thing when it started to eating me now. I think it's supposed to be addressed. See, I'm the youth from St. Francis, doing level 4. So I was hearing about everything that is happening here. So I want to ask each and everyone here, how are we going to do, like, to support the learning center area? Because I'm the leader in that school. I have my 2 ladies there. They are working with me. They are working together as a youth. So I was like, we were always facing some of the problems about what do you call it? Yes, sanitary towels.
Sanitary.
So on the money that I get from my side, you see, on the 250 that I get, I always having a half of 250 to know that I will help someone with the transportation. I was hearing that they will complain of transportation, you see, helping them, or maybe I will put that money to buy some towels for other. Yes.
You can speak in Hausa and then we will translate.
Yeah. So now it's been a while. I know it's been a while, like complaining. What can we do as a youth, or as you guys, like the old people, like to get OGs, yeah.
OGs and the YGs.
Yeah, OGs and the YGs to get this together. Because if I'm going to say no, we need the help, like from government will be slow to come and help us. And then there are children, maybe they want food, and maybe they want something to achieve, you see. And others of them, like, they drop out because of they don't have food that is enough from their home. And then they come in school and then they see others eating there. And there's no one who's giving them, maybe who's sharing with them. If you can check up the time we were like starting to do registration, and then see now, you will see we have like a less student rather than right now in school, because of the transportation, because of food. You see all of those things. How can we work together? Because this thing is not only needing one person or one government to be solved. it needs us to be together. You see, we know that name says that Ubuntu. You see, how can we like? Yeah, so that is what was my point, man. Because it's speaking me, because you can't be a student and then you become a social worker in the school. You see all of those things, become someone that is putting the money for other children. You see, so I think guys, can you please, man, help us, because it's hitting us, man. Not only me, others they want to complain that because of time. You see all of those things. So thanks, guys.
Jackie, do you want to say something? Oh, sorry, Jackie, I didn't see your hand. Go, Jackie. Okay. Can we first hand over to the gentleman and then to Jackie?
Yes. Okay. Thanks very much for me to be present in this education for democracy dialogue. I'm from Inizamwe, which is out there. My name is Nicholas. I've got 4 kids. 2 are also part and parcel of being in the primary school, and the other ones are at the university. There's only one question I also want to put on the table: the question of primaries in our communities, because we can find out our primaries in our communities, specifically at Inizamwe region, are totally different. There is international primary school where one parent cannot even afford to pay the fees, whereby the particular parent wants his child or her child to be part of getting a good education. There's a nicer school, which is also for those who, I can say, those who have. And when other schools are like where my child can go, because I cannot afford to pay that fees, because I'm not working, the parents doesn't work. There are those children who has been actually, I can't say it's because the only way I know is the standard. Now they're talking about grades. So now the one who's going to grade 9, and then both parents sometimes pass away. At the very same time, the particular child can no longer go to school. And my question is there isn't any way of engaging with those kind of children, because they want to go to school, but because of both parents are no longer there, and that is where the child ended up not going to school. And thirdly, there must be a career exhibition, like where the local children who pass matrics, for an example, I think there isn't any information center to request all these bursaries, to request all this information. Well, so now for that child who's residing at Inizamwe, must have transportation to come to the city. From the city, whereby there isn't any money for transportation to come seek bursaries from all of these campuses that the speaker has already been mentioning it. And then whereby there isn't any full information, because if one resides in the privileged communities, the department must also try to visit those communities just to make them aware of there's such things that can help you from this department. If you want to go to that, or to apply to that particular college, what do you need to do? So those kind of information actually must come down and flows to the grassroots level. It also can help. And also in terms of, as far as I was mentioning, the fact about kids that doesn't have parents, kids that have parents, maybe one parent doesn't have even work. So now the Department of Education, because that parents was already taking that particular kids to school, but today I don't have income to send my child to school. So maybe I've been paying more than 6 years for my child to go to school, but now I can't afford. So now my child will never go to school because there isn't anyone who may assist me. So the department must also create that sort of scheme that, okay, right, visiting maybe one of the schools in our day, asking the kids that have parents, see, parental care. There's kids that doesn't have parental care. There's kids that can't even buy a Colgate, but they must go to school. There's kids, as the guy over there was mentioning it, they can't even afford. So if they can also come visit the community, schools in our communities, and educate, try to educate those kids at school, that will also help our parents. That can also help parents at home. Because parents at home tell me, a parent whose age, at the age of 60s, can't even write English, can't even assist the child to do the homework. So who's actually going to assist the child the homework? So those kind of needs that we are asking. And also regarding the conditions where our children are. You can't do a homework in one room. No, you can't. Whereby your parents is there, your child who's supposed to do the homework is there in one room. So, and our environment is not actually not secure in terms of their child can do the homework. Their child can learn in a space that suits their child. And then the child, when the child goes to school now, both parents will fight it. The child never sleep. When the child goes to school, she falls asleep. She can't even understand what is happening at school because of sometimes the children, they are in the situation where the parents, they put them in. So those are other things that I would like maybe if the department can strongly put hands together in assisting local schools. More especially the local schools are affected in terms of schooling and also changing the mental of schools. Because if, as I was mentioning, these 3 categories, primary schools, a child from my school can't even type, but she's doing the same class, same like that particular child in that school. That school has got the equipment in that school where I can afford my child to send it to. There isn't any equipment. So now the level of education is totally different. It's not the same. Yeah, thank you.
Powerful point. Can the last comment from the room be from Jackie, please? So, your mic, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jackie. I'm with the Public Education Office. And so this is part of adult learning. And so in 2004, we hosted International Adult Learning. And countries came here from across the globe to celebrate adult learning. And so when we met as an organizing, we asked how far have we come? We've actually slipped backward. And there have been many campaigns and many conversations, and yet we slipped backward. Even the conversations we're having now is more focused on formal education, rather on shifting how we live as humans. And these all came up in our organizing conversations. And so when I listen to what we're talking about, and I want to say this to Ashley, I hear your caution, but I do think it's got to do with values. It's not other people that are in our institutions. We can't now say any longer it's white people. We in those institutions institutions, our brothers, our sisters. And so we shape those values. And so our own internalized oppression. And so it's easy for me working for the state, saying this, but every day I come to work and I often ask that question, do you belong here? I've worked in civil society most of my life. Yes, we belong here. But the question is, how do we shape and shift our institutions? When actually it's okay for it to be business as usual. It's not other people sitting here. It's us in our organizations, in our institutions. We hold quite senior positions. And so what are we doing? We come together to think as a community practice. But we don't come together to plan around resources. And so it's one of the things that we're doing as an organization is to plan for 2024 around resources. And I think the stories of young people, the stories of the are important stories. We can't be in Parliament and not take it forward. And one of the questions, I think it was either the James said, what do we want to take away from this time? And so in 2024, what's the story we want to tell in terms of what we've achieved between 2023 and 2024? And I think that's what this should be about. So the stories, and that's where we should be going. And so I'd like to hear some of those recommendations in terms of the research. I hear the recommendations in terms of TVET, in terms of higher education, but we can't work like that if we talk about communities and societies. So I thought it was important.
It's a very good segue into the presentation that follows this. Do you want to make a final comment? Do you mind if we just give Devondre the floor? She's had her hand up for about half an hour.
Okay.
Devondre, do you want to speak?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my hand is by Blam van Opono. But first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity I have to speak. I just want to add something before I continue. That we should never, ever try to shun the voices of young people here. I feel quite disrespectful for not being allowed to speak even on the previous topic. And I really want to ask that we don't shun the voice of young people, because these topics affect us the most when it comes to this country. I want to address or speak about the three topics of NSFAS, firstly, of college placements or where they are, as well as workplace placement and internships. So NSFAS basically was created during apartheid, but the scope of NSFAS was basically expanded when we had democracy through our brave freedom fighters. And it's basically there to allow for poor South Africans, working class people, to also have access to universities or colleges. But we have a thing now when NSFAS went around the backs of student leaders, because I was privileged to also be elected for about 6 months this year to also serve on the SRC. And the thing I had to deal with was NSFAS, where poor young people would come to college. I don't have money to come to college today because NSFAS has refused to fund me. Why? There's no reason for it, but we all know that this child comes from a poor background. Now, the thing is that NSFAS are aware of the social economic conditions of many of our people in South Africa, specifically those from our colored and black communities. But it doesn't seem like they care about our black and colored people when it comes to poverty, because this system was created to afford poor people with the opportunity to attend college, but the same policy in place is now failing the very poor people that needs it the most. So we also have SAFETSA. We have the CEC that is there within the TVET sector to listen to the concerns of the SRCs on campuses. And they are also failing. These are people that work with the minister or that incompetent minister of us at national level. It doesn't even care about our students in the TVET sector. That guy has promised us that we will have a system where poor people or the working class, middle class people will be provided with funding. This not happened. It's what, 3 years later, we have elections next year and nothing has changed. So yeah, NSFAS is a mess because we don't have political will in the first place to make the system works. Around TVET college placement, I heard a speaker saying that in the metro, there's plenty of colleges that people can attend. Here's the issue. Now, the number of colleges in a community or area doesn't speak to accessibility. You can have 100 or 10,000 colleges in the metro of Cape Town, but if they aren't accessible to the million or the thousands of poor people in the Cape Town, it doesn't matter how many there are. Because I had to travel to Stellenbosch, Boland College, to attend the college there. You spend almost 150 rands, almost what, 800 rand per month to travel. I couldn't qualify for NAS because we're middle class and my father just gets over 350,000 rand per year. So I can't qualify for NSFAS in the first place. I had to really scramble sometimes because we are middle class, working class family. We don't have money to afford those types of things. You must first of all pay your tuition. You must pay for traveling allowance. I must eat at campus. It's expensive. But no, middle class people are quite rich, so it's fine. They can suffer on their own. So the amount of colleges that we have in the metropolitan area does not speak to accessibility in the first place. Because if I live in East Rivier, so the closest college I must go to is either at Belleville or you must go to Stellenbosch. There's not a single college between Belleville and Makassar. That is not democracy. It doesn't speak to accessibility. Secondly, we look at the courses. So the speaker also mentioned that we need to focus on more courses within, which is relevant within the city of Cape Town. I studied public management in Boland College. I'm still starting to find an internship or placement because there is no work within the scope of work. I was not told this when I applied for this course. When we ended our course in June this year, we went from Heidi Vandre in class as a SRC member also. Heidi Vandre, there's no more work within this course, so we're now going to fade the course out. So in 2024, there will be no more public management within the colleges. We were shocked because they wouldn't inform us, okay, so there will be no more work in this sector. You can't have it. No, they allowed us to spend almost 10,000 rand from my mother's money, my father's money, to pay for this course. Hundreds of rands or thousands of rands were spent on traveling fare, and now I need to try to look for a workplace or work there. So yeah, is a huge problem. But the thing is that TVET sector, as much as it is affordable for many of the poor working class people in this country, it is not as recognized by the public sector or private sector as we would have with your universities. So, also the other speaker mentioned that we should not try to compare other countries with South Africa, which is absolutely correct. Because we always try to say BRICS will do this for us and the government will do this for us, or China. We cannot compare China to South Africa because South Africa is a poor country because we're governed poorly. So the thing is that we need to change the narrative around the TVET sector works for everyone. We must first fix the sector and then start to promote it. And so young people, once more, don't shun our voices. Allow us to also have opinions because we also have opinions. We also have views on these types of matters. And I hope that for the next discussion, we will also be allowed to engage, specifically because I wanted to engage in the previous discussion. I couldn't because of time allocations. Please do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't keep anybody because I know we are in desperate need of a comfort break, but I want to thank everybody that engaged with the ideas that I brought to the table. There are two things that I get from all the speakers, particularly the young people from the community college sector that has spoken, the facilitator, lecturer from that sector. I think that I know that this notion of lifelong learning is part and parcel of the thinking and the narratives that are supposed to pull the thread of pull through the post-schooling thread. Your experience and lots of experiences like yours across the country obviously show that this is not happening. Sis Mara, I for one am sad. I was excited in 20, also part of the 2012 white paper, but of course made more real as the years went on, that the community college sector has not gotten the rocket fuel to take off, because that could be such an important stepping stone into lifelong learning. So when the young man at the back of the age of 40 decides to retrain, all the blocks are in place to support him. If he was a hairdresser at 19 and decided to become a boilermaker at 40, the lifelong learning trajectory should be there for him. It's the dream. And I absolutely get your frustration with the dream because, like you, I also came back into studies late in my life, and doors closed because there's no funding, because you're a grown woman over 50, there's no funding, even at state level. The last point that I want to raise is our speakers Mr. Nkeke from Nzamayetu and his neighbor colleague had also spoken. Thank you to the young man for providing translation. The delivery of education, and in particular public education as a public good, as a common good, is one of the saddest weaknesses in this country, despite, and I bring you back to the Freedom Charter, the doors of learning shall be open. The neighbor from Nzamayetu that described the conditions, Mr. Nkeke that described the conditions, the irony is that those conditions are universal in most, if not all, working class communities. From Ocean View, which is a neighbor to Nzamayetu, because Ocean View is where Ocean View is, and Nzamayetu is in Hout Bay, to Alice, or to any of the townships in the Eastern Cape with the deepest outreaches against the Drakensberg, they are universal. So, you know, I can go on ad nauseum about this. The young man at the back asked, what can we do? I think that young people must stand up with us OGs and help us to decide at what point do we say enough is enough, particularly in education, and until we take up the mantle. Thank you for your time. I'm in desperate need of a cup of coffee, but thank you.
Thank you very much. With your permission, because we have run over time by half an hour already, actually 45 minutes. We did start late, but with your permission, we would like to take a short comfort break, come back at 1:30. There are two more presentations. One is Ivor Butchers, who's waiting on Zoom very patiently to talk about centering adult learning, centering non-formal education in adult and community education and community colleges. And that will be followed by Farrell, who will also be talking about community learning centers, the way forward. So I understand you may have, time issues, need to move to the next appointment. If you can come back, we would much appreciate it. We'll see you at 1:30. Thank you very much.
What's the time?
No. It's 1:15.
Okay.
To one to the new.
Yeah.
Thank you for your very wonderful comment.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for bringing it up, because of course I couldn't.
Yeah, I've got some of the questions from us. So,
Yes,
so many, really two-day gathering on
Speak to Ivor and to Catherine, let's do it today.
And so the interview, by the way, oh,
No, I didn't do it. Is there a recording? Yeah.
I'm also months now, I don't hold up for the coffee in the morning. But I got out of my bureaucratic office space and decided to go to one of our own partners and illustrate the first pilot community learning center in my schools into the just to go and get a sense of where the youth and community conditions.
Yeah.
And so it's not legendary.
Yeah.
Right? So even though people are, marginalized, impoverished, etc., but the experience is different in many ways. So we have to engage on these things a little bit more. So in spaces that's supposed to be a space for we actually give real time. In the day, so pockets of open wherever we trying to listen. I mean, this is around the
Talk to you. Yes. Savannah?
I'm not saying it's easy to have an annual break or anything like that. Yeah, but it is. And working with community, the group that we were in, which is so fascinating.
But there is a marked difference with working in a rural space and an urban space. There is a big difference. Actually, living